have to say that I say thank you to all of those people who try to make my life miserable, because I made me work harder and improve myself.
So did you know science was always going to be it for you? Were you drawn to it from an early age?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, my father thought that I could be a butcher also, because he knew somebody, a woman, to be a butcher, and I assisted him many times, and I was good at making sausage and other things.
But for you, it was always going to be science.
Yes, yes.
What drew you to it? Like, do you remember the thing that made you think, "Oh, this is a job people can do"?
I have to say that it was the curiosity. I think every child is curious, and we lived in a rural area, and our neighbor had a cow, and then we had chickens, and I have seen them coming out from the eggs, and everything was kind of magic. And we had stores, a lot of stores in this small town, and they are going and coming back, and this wonder about we didn't think about at that time GPS, but how they can find a place. Everything was so about nature was so magic, and you try to understand how this all happening.
Did your parents encourage that curiosity? Like, I mean, lots of kids are curious about where stuff comes from. It doesn't make them all scientific researchers.
Yes, so my father, I mean, I could see when he you know processed the pig, I could see the blood clotting. And I remember he gave me the heart, and he cut in half, and showing things there, just because I was curious. I have a 3 years older sister, and when we processed the pig, she was always inside. She didn't want to see anything. I was curious what is inside, what makes that animal running, and no, it's not running, kind of. Not that I like the animals, so it was not that, I enjoy it. It was just curious how
Yeah.
it's all happening. Yeah.
There's a scientist I was reading about that he said when he would come home from school every day, his mother never asked, "How did you do on the test? What are your
Mhm.
grades? Did you get in any trouble?" She always asked, "Did you ask any good questions?"
Mhm.
And there's something about encouraging curiosity in kids that can really start something special.
Oh, so we were asked about with my sister always that your homework is ready, because if we said yes, then we can help in the garden with the animals and do chores, and that was it. It was for my parents. It was important that to do the homework.
Yes. Right, but I think so often we can sort of pressure our kids into academic performance or to check the boxes as opposed to the underlying curiosity and exploration that I think serves you better in life.
Yes, I can imagine, but my father had 6 elementary education. My mother had 8 elementary, so they were not those kind of parents who highly educated, and they were pushing their children that they have to be achieve something, unbelievable thing, and so that was easy for us.
But did they encourage you in your science once? Like I imagine sometimes if you have a parent with a very blue collar profession and a very intellectual or cerebral kid can be intimidating or disorienting or just hard to understand. Did your parents support your love of science? How did that go?
Yes, yes. Our parents, for both of us, they were very loving, and then they emphasized that, you know, that we didn't had an opportunity to study, and then you have the opportunity. I didn't had a shoes to go to school during the winter, and you have it, and so you felt that, opportunity is there, and they didn't have it.
Yes, yes.
Didn't have it.
Yeah, I think sometimes like I'm writing about Lincoln in the book that I'm doing
Uh,
now, and he was sort of threatened by his son's love of books. I think deep down because he realized if his son read and learned and fell in love with education, he would leave, that he would lose his farmhand. Like just at this very practical level, it was threatening in that um, it would send him into another world, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, so first of all, we didn't have any books. We went sometimes to the library, but I more like was that in the school, because it was the communist system, and we had to interview some old guys, the big communists, and I went home and I told my father that this wonderful person, and my father said that, oh no, he's a bullshit man, and then I had to write a big story about that this person is still good, but it was in my mind that not really. That's kind of things what I learned from my father. And in school we learned that if somebody has a lot of money and those people are bad, rich people. And my father said not so, and he told me, although they never had money and they were poor, but the he knew that people were very kind, those who even
he
had money. Yeah.
he was in a small way sort of pushing back on some of the doctrine or the assumptions of a communist country for you.
Yes, yeah. He was, he talked his mind, and it was yes. So it was, for me, I knew that this is what happening in school, and they try to tell us these things, and but there is things are different.
When did you start to get a sense, not just that you were interested in this, but that you were really good at it, that you could go somewhere with it?
In elementary school already, when I was 13 years old, I was already competing in nationally in biology competition, that where they
Wow.
ask things. And I went to the summer camp in the capital, and then all of these girls and boys were there. Everybody wanted to be a scientist. You don't believe that we were 13 years old, and those who was in the same tent in this camp, they became a physician and a chemist, biologist. So at the age of 13, they knew they wanted to do. That's what I always thought about. And when I was 14, I was third best in the whole country in biology. And it was a whole week competition. And I had to take a train 150 kilometer away from small town where I grew up. And my father put me on the train and said, go to Budapest. And, because they said somebody will wait for me. It was a different time. And after 1 week when I arrived back, they learned that, okay, I made the trip and I am back now. So it
Well,
was,
there's kind of an interesting parallel there, right? Because your daughter is an Olympian, right? And so there must it's a similar process where you start to pull ahead of your peers, and then there's kind of a process that takes over if you decide to make a go of something.
yes. So, she was watching me that I'm working towards my goals, but, it was not much success, a lot of sweating there, but, I mean, it was also unbelievable because she started to rowing. She was always doing sports, so she was very fit, and she
Yeah.
was 6'2". She was very tall. She's very tall, and so it was almost when she started the rowing, what was 3 years later, she almost made the Olympics in Athens. But then, 4 years later, she made it and get the gold medal in the first Olympics and get another gold medal in the second Olympics. And it was just like, okay.
What an incredible full circle that your father's a butcher with a sixth grade education, and you become a Nobel Prize winning scientist, and then your daughter goes the exact opposite direction and is an Olympic athlete. What an arc for a family! It's incredible.
Yes, when the people said that we didn't know about, nobody knew about me. I said, oh, the rowers knew that I was Susan's mom. All of the rowers knew. And, and then later, when we went to the different, I get a lot of awards, and Susan came with me. They introduced her that Kati's daughter.
Right. That's so funny. So when did you know that you would have to leave? How did you come to the end of the road in Hungary?
So it was clear then. It was actually, I was 30 years old. It was on my birthday when they told me that by July 1st I have no longer position. And so we were arranged that we will celebrate with another couple, with my husband. And, we already had our daughter born in Hungary. And was not much celebration for me on that day. And I tried to stay in Hungary, apply for jobs. I couldn't get in Europe because I was not allowed to apply for funding because we were behind the Iron Curtain, so a lot of embargo and other things. So finally I applied for a job in US, and I get the response that in July I can start.
And so was it a you weren't exactly fleeing danger, but you were fleeing sort of a lack of opportunity.
Yeah, yes. And wanted to make sure that we stay Hungarian citizens. My daughter could go back to my mom and, spend the summer there. That's what we did. I did not want defect, or, it would be like you leave the country, then you cannot return. That time it was like in 85 when we left.
But there is a story you couldn't leave with much, right? It's in that way it is the sort of classic immigrant story of what are they left with the things they could carry.
Yeah, I was, just thinking about that. I now, 1 week later, like I was in Hungary, 1 week later I have to buy for things for dollars in the US. And we have the $100 total for three of us, and how we will survive for 1 month in with $100. And so that's why we sold our cars and exchanged the money and hide it, in
You
the.
had to hide it in your daughter's teddy bear, right?
Yes, I had to do it. No, she
Uh,
was
so
a smuggler, she smuggled
yes,
it.
she was an early smuggler. That's funny. Um, I mean, I think people, maybe it's from movies, maybe it's from books, we think scientific discovery is well, first off, we think there's a lot of epiphanies, that these ideas come from the epiphany, or we think that the research is exciting or glamorous. I was so fascinated by your story because, to be quite honest, it seemed like it was a grind. It didn't seem fun. And it seemed like it took a long, long time.
Yes, indeed, it seemed from outside that I was struggling, sweating. I had to say, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work, and I had, people thought that I am not successful because I didn't get grants, and was not promoted. I rather demoted. But I solved so many problems, and in the laboratory, oh, I solved this problem, that problem. Now it is more protein from the RNA, so I enjoyed, and it was fun. And just from outside seems like, it's boring to be a scientist. And then it is, success is looking successful is what many people put emphasis on, and not too happy. I am happy to do things, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing about a calling is you have to love the
Mhm.
process more than the outcomes. My friend Austin Kleani talks about too many people like the noun and not the verb. You have to like doing science, not being a famous scientist, right? Or
Uh,
if you're motivated by the moments of discovery and recognition, that's probably going to be few and far between. But if you like the day to dayness of being in the laboratory, you can have a lot of fun.
Exactly. People are saying now that you get a Nobel Prize, so reaching your goals is what you are doing now. I said it was never my goal. My goals were always something that I can achieve, I can work towards. Those are all of these awards. If somebody is making a decision, you should get this or not get or get. You
Yeah.
cannot. It cannot. It shouldn't motivate you. More
Yes.
like, what I am doing is maybe helping somebody eventually, and that could be a motivation. And also, craving this recognition, that's also can spoil all of these things. I never wanted to be recognized. I was so happy without. It was enough for me knowing that, okay, I am doing something, and maybe other scientists, follow up, and then they one day they will help somebody.
Well, I think about that as a writer, like writing a great book, that's in my control. Whether it hits the
Mhm.
bestseller list is not in my control. Whether it's nominated for a prize or not is not in my control. And what a reviewer says about it is not in my control. So I have to really pour all that energy into the day-to-dayness of sitting down and doing the work. And I have to take all the gains and the return from that because well, I mean, it might never come out. I could get hit by a truck, it could get banned. There's so many things can prevent you from getting the recognition or, the achievement. But if you actually like the process and doing the thing, that's attainable right now for effectively anyone.
Yeah, that was a great thing what you just said. Yeah, exactly. So that you should enjoy doing things, and even I never get any R01 grant. That means meant in the U.S. that you are a scientist. I never get one, but learning and concentrating for a couple of months, just one project on how would I how others tried approach the problem and what they did and how I could see things differently. This whole process is an exciting thing and learning. That's what is important.
Well, I imagine there's some lessons there that you probably passed on to your daughter too, which is like you don't control whether you make the Olympic team. You don't control if you get injured. You have to like you have to like the craziest part of it, which is hours and hours of rowing or hours and hours of writing or hours and hours. You have to like the worst part of it the best
Yeah,
to potentially be great at something.
as you just said, I told my daughter, "Isn't that boring? Every day, just go backwards on this boat." And she said, "Mom, it is every practice is different. I enjoy it. In the minute I don't, I will leave it, and I leave. I
Yes.
won't row."
And it isn't like, sometimes we're well paid for stuff, sometimes we're not, but isn't like the rarest, most great, most wonderful gift you can get is to find that thing, that crazy thing that you love that other people can't wrap their heads around? Not
Exactly.
everyone gets that.
Yeah, so because that's what we are going to school to try out ourselves. That maybe this one or this one. It's more, when you move out from also this comfortable zone, you're not just discovering the world around you, you're discovering more about yourself. That, oh, I am able to do that. I never even thought, but I was put in the situation and I had to get out somehow from it. So this discovery of yourself is during when you are in school, and or the rest of your life, you are always discovering something about yourself.
Yeah, what's the thing that lights you up, and then what are the capacities that you didn't know that you had? That's the kind of day-to-day discovery that you get to explore.
Exactly. Yes.
But it was a long grind from what I understand. So you came to Pennsylvania when, and how long were you basically in the the basement laboratory exploring? It was not quick.
Yeah, yeah. So 1985, we arrived, so 40 years ago. And, after 3 years at Temple, where I work heavily, a lot of work I did there. And finally, I was kicked out. I was subject for deportation, not because I was bad, but because, my professor wanted me to stay. And then
Sure.
I commuted to Bethesda. Then 24 years I spent University of Pennsylvania. I was hired as faculty, but 5 years later I was demoted, and I was doing experiments. But I always had somebody who believed me, who had money, and then I could get salary. And not much, but 40, up until 2010 it was already 60,000, so probably much less than the technician. But I didn't care about that part. I thought that I can make this mRNA a useful, this messenger RNA a useful tool. And that was I was so encouraged and believe.
So I think sometimes people think that all it takes is being good at something or all it takes is having an idea. But it sounds like there was a lot of politics, there was a lot of patience, there was a lot of putting up with slights, there was a lot of developing thick skin, a lot of just simple endurance. Like that's a key component to anyone that accomplishes anything. Not I guess some people get green lights all the way, but most of us don't.
Yeah, so you have to believe in yourself, coming from this small town, and now that in Ivy League, you have to believe that, okay, my English is not good, tararam, but yeah, I can think about something that all of these smart people who are publishing Nature Science, maybe they are not thinking about. And you have to believe, and you have to also realize that there are a lot of different difficulties, but like somebody's coming from another country, those immigrants, scientists, they already fight it so hard, to get there. They won't give
Sure.
up so easily. They are enduring hardship and swallowing thing, and don't talk back. I have to say, sometimes under the table I show my middle fingers, but because I was upset. But usually I was like a calm person, and okay, and dealt with things.
Yeah, it's there's something about the adversity of your life and your upbringing that probably makes as painful and frustrating and annoying as some of the academic, squabbling and inefficiencies and bureaucracies, you'd probably dealt with worse, so it wasn't so bad.
Yes, of course, and you learn that you you have to keep your eye on what you want to achieve, and then there are different difficulties are coming. But every time, when you think, okay, that's why I want to go, and that's what I want to accomplish, and then you can see just this is another problem and obstacles, and you just go over it.
But how do you know you're not crazy? Right? How do you know you're not delusional? Like when you're pursuing something that over and over again people are basically telling you either explicitly isn't going to
Mhm.
work, or in what they're paying you or the hoops they're making you jump through, they're
Mhm.
basically saying, "We don't believe in this. This is a dead end. It's not worth anything."
So I was not just doing and repeating things, just not giving up, but I could see progress. So, at the beginning, the problem was a small amount of protein was produced from the RNA. And then there are things, we could change the RNA, put certain things on it. Oh, no, it is more protein. And it was, this progress. You have to see progress. I'm not just repeating things just because, oh, I am the person who is not giving up, and always reading maybe this one, and then you try zillion things to deliver the RNA, improving the RNA, purifying it, and then try, and somehow I could not. I was thinking, okay, this is will work something, and I couldn't stay home. So whether it was Sunday, Saturday, whether it is New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I had to go because I felt that, okay, now I have this answer. And when I was doing already thinking, if it's not coming, maybe the result which I expected, then maybe I have to do this and that. And then I was always told my colleagues, I wish I would be a week or months older, because then I would know the result. I wish so much always that, okay, maybe it works, not. And I was excited. If you would talk to my husband, he would say that I am not coming home like, oh, everybody's horrible, terrible. I was always that excitement.
Well, I think I saw a quote from him in that New York Times profile of you where he was like, "Don't you feel sorry for my wife? She loved going to work every day."
Yeah, but he was the same. He also likes, and the feeling that, if he's a maintenance manager in a housing complex, and they need him because he can fix everything, and he can figure out things, and that feeling that they want me because I can help. And it didn't
Yeah,
matter whether it was, Thanksgiving dinner or something. He got the call, and then, he's already there to help.
yeah. If you feel like your work matters
Hmm.
and it's fulfilling to you, you'll put up with a lot.
Yeah, exactly. You are right.
Did you find it motivating? Like, was part of it for you? Like, I want to prove these people wrong.
No, no, I never care about, what others are saying, or whether, I did not care. Every time when somebody put me down, or even now they are asking now that you go back and what are you telling those people? They are colleagues. I talk to them. I don't say anything bad.
Well, I just sometimes that's fuel for people, right? Wanting to prove them wrong, wanting to be vindicated. That can be
Mhm.
very motivating for people. But I do tend to find that's kind
Mhm.
of corrosive also.
Yeah.
So what that does is when you finally succeed, you think it's finally going to change something, or people are going to apologize or admit they were wrong, and you're going to feel better, and you never do.
Yes. Do you think that my neurosurgeon chairman, I mean, he didn't know what his mRNA is doing. He could see that I don't get any grant and no hard feeling. No, and I don't even, angry with those who evaluated my grants, and because they have so many things to do, and then they would reading the abstract, and they could see, oh, this is weird things, and they have other problems, with their family, with their laboratory. They need grants, they need papers pushing, and they have limited attention. And every time when I was reading something criticism, and I could say, oh, they didn't understand what I was saying, and then I said, yeah, I should write better. I always look
Yeah.
what I should do, not what they should do.
Yeah, it's easy to take it all personally,
Mhm.
and then you realize they're not thinking about you at all. You don't even exist to them,
Mhm.
and they are evaluating a million other people. Look at the
Mhm.
publishing industry is not sitting around trying to not publish you. It's that
Mhm.
you're not what they're looking for, and you have to
Mhm.
figure out either how to be that, or you got to wait your turn. And it sounds like you kind of did both in science.
Yes, they want more preliminary data, and they want more publication. But because I was alone, I had to perform the experiments, I had to write it up, I had to read the literature, I had to do every part, and so it was, I was not that productive.
So you did all this for 30 plus years. I'd be curious, did that time go quickly, or was it very slow? Like I've always found that one there to me, a sign that you're doing the right thing and you're in the right place is how often you lose track of time. Like you just get lost in it. And I imagine you read about Darwin deciding to take a 10-year detour to study barnacles or whatever. That 10 years seems excruciating, but I bet it went by very quickly for him, because to him it was an essential part of what he was trying to figure out to go do this other thing. When you just love it, you lose track of time. Did Was it an excruciating process for you, or were you just lost in it?
I probably lost time, thinking that, oh, what am I doing? Sometimes okay, even in the laboratory, in daily basis, just realizing, oh my God, I have to pick up my daughter in the after school program and things like that. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think when people, like if someone's drawn to a career in science, and then you said, okay, you got to spend the next 30 years in the bowels of academia without recognition or credit, or, you know, they might think, oh, that sounds like torture.
yeah. So, but I always mention to the young one that you have to select something which you find important, so that you worth spending all your life on something. It has to be valuable, not things nobody did that, but but who cares? But if you find something which is worse, because maybe understanding a disease, and then it will help to create a medicine for it or something, you feel passionate that, okay, that's important. Even
Yeah.
others not recognize that it is important, but you have to have that feeling in you.
Well, and this is probably why money is not a great motivator, because you'd have to pay someone a lot and a lot of money to be to stick at something for 30 years. What's interesting about clearly it wasn't motivated by the money, because you weren't getting any. You but you were motivated by something deeper and but weirdly more accessible than money, which is that it lit you up.
Yes, yes. I was motivated to improve that RNA performance. And one day, I did not think that it would be in my lifetime. I just maybe one day somebody will take on a new level, and that's what you have to, scientists, that feeling you need. Maybe I will be able, but maybe somebody else, and I am helping. And all of these scientists, they work together. I Every time I get an award, I always thank to all of those people, those who I learned from them. Just reading their paper, they already dead and a long time ago they lived, but I learned from them. I also, I have to say that I say thank you to all of those people who try to make my life miserable, and gave me hardship, because I made me work harder and improve myself. And okay, I invited only for the ceremony, for the Nobel Prize ceremony, those who helped me, those who help my process, but by blocking me, they were not there.
Yes, yes, but they contributed to what you became, because in the way that lifting a heavy weight or whatever, the resistance is making you stronger. It refined you and it sharpened you and it taught you things that ultimately you did integrate into the research that you that was successful.
I mean, even in high school, when my teacher, were telling me that he will block me to entering the university because he knows somebody, and he hated me. And retrospect, I can think that, okay, if he says that, Kati, you are so good, I know somebody, I will make sure that you are accepted. Isn't that I would spend less time studying for this entry exam? Of course I studied. I had to do the
Sure.
best to make sure that they accept me. So that's what, when the parents try to help their children and they arranging things, they do. You are robbing your child to learn how to fight for themselves. Because one
Sure.
point you can go to the school and tell the teacher that don't do that and that, but eventually you won't go to the employers and saying, "Oh, this is my child. You shouldn't say that and that." So they have to learn, and that's
Yeah. Do you know what a snowplow parent is? Have you heard that term?
oh no.
A snowplow parent is a parent who goes in front of their kids,
Uh-huh.
clearing all
Mhm.
the snow and the obstacles out of their way. And so, yeah, they never have to struggle. They never have to learn how to do things for themselves. And
Mhm.
ultimately, life is hard for everyone. And the snowplow goes away at some point, and you're really setting them up to struggle, because not only do they not know how to do things, they also lack the 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 most important thing, which is they can't deal with frustration and disappointment, which is kind of the meta skill of life.
You try to help, but you won't help. You are not helping.
Well, look, if your parents had had told you that you were a princess and you were going to get everything you wanted in life, and that you were a genius and everyone would appreciate you and give you everything you wanted, I got to imagine those 30 years of snubs and jerks and doubts and demotions, that you would have interpreted that differently. It would have been a kind of a rude awakening that maybe would have made you less resilient and able to deal with what you had to deal with to end up where you are now.
Yeah, and there are a momentum when parents really need, the child to help, because when they are wandering around and they, in a crisis, then you have to help them with. But
Sure.
then most of the time, just let them to deal with fellow students, the teachers, and you know, with respect. You have to teach them, and I believe, that the first 6 7 years of life, watching your parents, how they relate to each other, to other people, the kids will pick up, and then it shape what kind of people they will be at the end. The
Uh,
parents, the school, the classmates, the teachers, and watching them.
It is unavoidable. Obviously, it's a fact of life. There's going to be jerks. There's going to be people who doubt you. You're not going to get green lights all along the way. Not every colleague's going to see you as a friend. But it does strike me like people don't have to be that way, right? Life would, the world would be better if people were nicer, if they helped, if they supported each other. uh it is a shame that people choose to be that way. I guess we can't reform society, but we can reform ourselves. We can decide not to be like that.
Yeah, actually, I quote in my book, Shaya, saying that, you should not retaliate, you should not think about revenge when you are very upset with somebody because it hit you back, if you are,
Yeah.
and it escalates. And you have to think about, some way to be grateful for the same person you were just ready to kick balls or something, and you were very angry. You have to think that in one way I can be still grateful for that person, and because it said that it will calm you down.
Well, I'm just saying it's like in your story, there's a bunch of people that were obstacles and difficulties, and not necessarily the most supportive. But you also said at every step of the way there was someone who believed in you, who did support you, and where would we be without those people? There are the bosses that support and subsidize and open door, like we can choose to be those kinds of people, the sort of angels that at the angels and patrons and protectors that at various points in our career really did something for us that they didn't have to do.
Exactly. Elliot Barnatan, who hired me at Penn, he stand up for some bullies there, who, try to inhibit me to even for scientific part of scientific discussion because I ask scientific question, but I thought they considered me disruptor, and he stood up, and then he was not tenured and he had to leave.
Oh, wow.
Okay, a little thing was there, that I invited him to Stockholm, and David Langer, who was just a student, and actually he was like, as a medical student, kind of saying always that, by he will learn everything what I know. Huh? I told him, oh, by that time I will know so much more that you never ever catch me. And so, but the end, we became good friends, and he helped me to for 17 years I get a position at neurosurgery. And every time when they were about kick me out, he came back from New York and he made sure that whatever little money I got, but I should get it and then stay. And so he was also in Stockholm, and all of my teachers from Hungary, that those educators from university, they wrote the high school book about molecular biology when just 9 years after discovering the code and the mRNA, already it was in my high school book,
Wow.
biology book, thanks to them.
Yeah, it's better to celebrate those people than ruminate on the people who were not so great.
Exactly.
So, someone I watched something where someone was asking you about, the stress and the strain and the pain of all of it, and you actually mentioned Stoic philosophy, which is what I write about. I didn't I was that was a link I wasn't expecting.
Yes, so I was always focusing on what I can do. And,
Yeah.
whether we are behind the Iron Curtain, we were, under embargo, many things. We couldn't leave the country, we couldn't go to a conference or something. But okay, we cannot do it. But what we can do is, doing things, and you could read, and then you could ask a fellow scientist in the Western part of Europe to send you things, and you felt so honored that they were thinking, yeah, these guys, they're scientists, fellow scientists. I always, when different countries under embargo, I think about them. The scientists, they are just scientists like I was, and
Yeah.
they want to do things, and that they cannot have that one day the life they are living right now, maybe the country has different limitation, and but so that's, you focus on things what you can do. And right now, whether in the US, whoever in White House, whoever, you just have to figure out what you can do. For me, when I was driving to, 15 miles to work at a Penn, every time I was more worried about what is in the Schuylkill Expressway, is a traffic jam. Whoever sits in the White House, this didn't influence me, but daily basis more the traffic and other things. And what can I do? I started very early in the morning so I can avoid, the traffic, and that's what, you know, focusing on things what we can do.
Do you remember how you found the Stoics? Did someone introduce you to them, or?
Yeah. When I was 16 years old, I mentioned, Hans Scheyer. János Scheyer was Hungarian, and he wrote the book about how to handle stress. Actually, in 1930, he introduced the word stress from physics. That was he was using for, and because he was Hungarian, they translated his book about how to handle stress. And in high school, I was 16 years old. In the biology class, we all read this book, and then we discussed the different situations, so that how we should understand, that and that. And then, I realized that, of course, Marcus Aurelius and all of these, actually what he was saying always, that focus on what you can do. That was the same what Shea was saying, but, long before him, saying others.
Well, I don't know if you know this. I'm sure you do, but Marcus Aurelius wrote part of Meditations in Budapest.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever visited a Quincum. There's a Roman camp right
Yeah, yeah.
outside of and the ruins there,
Uh-huh.
and we know Marcus Aurelius spent a good chunk of time in Budapest visiting the troops, and the dates line up. We think he wrote, a chunk of it. When he talks about never stepping in the same river twice, he could have been talking about the Danube. Like he was there. He was bathing in the hot springs. He was walking on the dusty roads. He was there where you're from.
Oh, thank you very much. I know Aquincum, but I didn't know about that he was here.
It kind of blows your mind because when you think of the Roman Empire, it was big, but you still think of Italy or you think of Greece. You don't think that they're in Eastern Europe. I mean, he dies in Vienna. It's kind of mind blowing.
I lived in Mainz, 9 years when I worked in biotech. Actually, across the street was the wall, so it was the empire, was the end of the
Yes.
empire was there in Germany, in Mainz, next to Frankfurt. That was the big wall was there.
Yeah, I mean, he spends most of his. He has this quote. He says, "Life is warfare and a journey far from home." And I think he was being metaphorical, but also literal. I mean, he spends most of his time not in this fancy palace, but work. He's traveling for work, so to speak.
Yeah, so all of these I was reading in Hungarian poems about, that really all of these politicians and all of these leaders, and they are not, creating things. They just did understand that they understand that what is going on. That's what like my colleague also in biotech, the CEO of biotech, Ugo Zain, said, that this is a good football player. Instantly you have to have this is the situation, I pass the ball here and
Yes.
there. So all of this understanding of what is going on and what you will do and what you can, and that's the Stoic, that you can do what is the position or possibility. That's what you do. And
Well, it's funny how timeless this stuff is because one of the things that Epictetus talks about is he says, a great athlete, or he says a great philosopher is like a great athlete. He says like they throw the ball to you, you throw it back. Uh, they throw it to you, you throw it back. You catch it, throw it back. Catch it, throw it back. He's like you don't have time to label it a good throw or a bad throw. You don't have time to complain or whine. You just got to catch it and throw it back. And he believed, that was Socrates. That Socrates was just dealing with what life threw at him, back and forth, and that's what a great athlete does. That's what a great CEO does. It's probably what a great scientist does. Is you're just in it. You don't have time for labels and complaining and fairness or unfairness. You're just doing it.
but having practice and different situation, then you can do decision
Yes.
making much faster, and that's the
Yes.
advantage. And whereas other people are spending time, you know complaining and things which they cannot change, but they keep talking about. And when they say that the people have things and they don't have, and they don't have any opportunity to do something about it, they will be always depressed, that I cannot do anything. And it is just the life goes by, and they just one day realize that, oh, life is over, and I was focusing on things and wasting my time instead of focusing on something which I can do, and not complaining that where did I born, I should born somewhere else. I am very happy that I born in Hungary, and who, my parents were people who were not professors, and we, lived a very simple life, but they loved each other. And that, more important, you don't see much of the communist system, when I was growing up, like, up to 10 years old, that you just could see a happy family, and
Yeah.
you have enough to eat, because I could see other kids had to go from house to house and back for some an egg or a little food. And I
I've been trying to think about that lately. I don't think anyone's childhood is exactly the way that they wanted it to be, but I just decided a year or so ago I was going to focus a lot more on what I did get than what I didn't get, and I was gonna count myself lucky for the things that I did get, as opposed to continuing to sort of dwell on the things that I should have gotten or I wished that my parents could have done. Like, they are who they are. I'm lucky that I had these other people and these other things, and that's what I'm going to choose to focus on.
exactly, because anyway, if I would look around, and nobody had running waters in their home, we had electricity, but refrigerator, television set, but nobody had. I didn't even know. And so it was like a simple life, but the whole neighborhood was just like that. And
Yeah.
we play on the street, and we had like one car per week, and there were,
Yeah.
and all of the cows were, went in the morning, went out to the field, and in the evening came back, and it was just a simple life.
Well, one other connection between our two worlds that I didn't realize until 2020. Um, Obviously, pandemics and plagues existed in the ancient worlds too, and it didn't. I guess sometimes you don't see something until your own circumstances change, but it just never occurred to me that Marcus Aurelius was writing during a plague. He was writing during the Antonine Plague, and he has this quote in Meditations where he says, there's actually two types of plagues. He says there's one that can take your life, and so there he's referring to the literal Antonine Plague, which is probably some form of smallpox. And then he says there's this other one that can destroy your character. And that one's actually worse. And I think he was talking about the way people get radicalized, people believe in conspiracy theories, people turn on each other, people hoard things. And I just thought it was so fascinating the way that, 2,000 years collapse and you go, oh, he was dealing with the exact same things we were dealing with.
Yes, exactly, and that's really the worst. What we are experiencing right now, that all of this misinformation, and I mean, and I don't even know that what should we do, or how we could actually, in first week of March, I go to the Vatican, and with the other with the um, economists, politicians, and uh, religious leaders will discuss, and artists, to discuss that how we get here, that what so many
Mm-hmm.
things is ending our world, seems like, war, and all of this misinformation and many other things, and what we, all the scientists and different artists and others, how we, what we can do, and how can
Yeah.
we can deal with it. I don't know, it's difficult.
When and it kind of resembles a virus. Like, you watch someone, they start to show a few symptoms, they say something, you're like, oh, that's odd, or they act this way, and then the next thing you know, they're like a full-blown lunatic, and you go, oh, you got infected, and now you're saying things, or you're believing things, or worse, you're supporting policies or people that are that have very real consequences, sometimes matters of life and death for thousands, if not millions of people. And it's kind of this metaphorical virus that is, yeah, I mean, you could argue it's infected millions of people all over the world. I don't know anyone that is, I mean, obviously long COVID exists, but most people I know are not still dealing with the aftermath of of that part of the pandemic. But I know a lot of people that haven't come back, from things they picked up on the internet during 2020 and 2021.
Yes, yes, exactly. And they are reading something two, three times, and they believe that it must be true. And,
Yes.
I feel, we as a scientists to have the responsibility that educate the public, and we have to learn how to use simple language. And then, the gap between the knowledge of a scientist who is in the forefront and the average person is so huge, and
Yes.
we have to help them, because there are still people who, waiting for that we will educate them, and so we have to do it.
Yeah, effective communication and logistics and support systems and culture, these things,
Mhm.
it, you can have all the scientific breakthroughs in the world, but if people are threatened by things, or they don't understand things, or they feel misled by things, you're gonna crash into a pretty big brick wall.
Yeah, yeah. So exactly, we have to do it, because if we don't, then others who have learned molecular biology or infectious disease from the internet, they will fill the gap. And usually they
Yeah.
are selling something, they are making money. At the end, you will see that they will advertise something that take this one. It is that's for sure.
Yeah, if scientists can't be effective at communicating their ideas and they can't sell them, so to speak, somebody else who's better at selling
Yeah.
will compete for that bit of attention and sell something worse.
Yeah, and we have to understand that even 100 years ago, the average person was afraid of scientific breakthroughs. That even when Röntgen demonstrated that he has these X-rays and it will go through the flesh and other things, and the others took part of this thing, and they said, "Oh, it goes through the clouds, your
Yeah.
dress," and then they start to selling, X-ray resistant underwear. They made money, and they said that, like, in the binoculars in the theater shouldn't have X-ray. They already lobbied in England, because then people will see you. There is some, and then they can see you without clothes. And they didn't say, "Hey, this goes through the flesh too," but they just took part of the, truth. And so that's
Yeah.
100 years ago, but it was no internet and no social media that people were, in a mess, they would learn.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about the rush to invent the polio vaccine, and it was like like, I guess early on in the case of the polio vaccine, there was a batch that was contaminated. There was some problem with the polio
Mhm.
vaccine, and then one guy, a very well known media columnist, sort of becomes a prominent anti-vaxxer, and it sets the whole thing back, and you go, oh, history just repeats itself. This is how human beings respond to things that are scary, things that are unfamiliar, things that are dangerous. I mean, there's an argument that Benjamin Franklin and his wife split up where you live, split up over an argument about whether to vaccinate their son for smallpox, and they decide not to, and he doesn't live, and it sort of hovers over their marriage for the rest of their life. And you go, oh, the same things that couples were arguing about in 2021, people were arguing about in the 1730s and 40s and 50s.
Yeah, so history repeats itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very sad. And I constantly try to figure out that how we could help the people who try to. I have to say that we have this mRNA meeting, and those messenger RNA field. We already 2013, we knew how many things happen, and we are doing so. It was not coming out of nowhere. Even people don't know that they used mRNA vaccines already human trial prior to 2020, and
Mm.
so it was already well known things in our field that messenger RNA has this potential they use for heart disease and other diseases, and so uh, we knew that, and so we have this. responsibility. And one mRNA therapy meeting, that they showed this cartoon, and they didn't have to explain that, oh, this is the virus, because it was very ugly and dark, not like most of the people make the COVID in pink. No, this was
Yeah.
ugly. And then, the cells, you don't have to explain that this is some immune cells, and they're rushing and capturing, and so that and they show that how somebody gets a vaccine and how the cells are running there and educate themselves, and then they are chasing the viruses. So that very simple, that you don't have to use a word, you understand who
Yes.
you have to root for.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Well, look, I think you're such a wonderful example of, like, it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It doesn't matter if you're appreciated or not. It doesn't matter if everyone thinks it's the next big thing or they think it's a bust. The one thing that's in our control is the work that we do, and we should keep our head down, do our work, and that we should direct ourselves towards things that we think can make a big difference, and that there's something, I think, important, and in your case, heroic, about sticking to that. You never know where it's going to go or what's going to come of it, but don't despair. Don't get depressed. Just focus on your work and do good work. And if everyone does that, it makes collectively an enormous difference.
Yes, exactly. And I have to say that you have to convince at least one person who is close to where, the money, the prestige, and that was Elliot who get the grant.
Yeah,
You have to at
sure.
least one person. If you cannot convince those who are giving out the grant, at least one person personally, and then you could do the research, because otherwise, you can be a periphery, but if you don't get money to do the research, then you get lost. But I was
Well, if you can't convince one person, it's probably a bad sign,
yeah,
that either the idea is not good or that you don't understand it. We were talking about
mhm,
communication earlier. Feynman talked about how you have to be able to explain this thing to a 5-year-old or you don't understand it.
yes,
If you can't get anyone to understand the potential of what you're doing, maybe that's because you don't understand it.
exactly, I agree. So I ask always the students, go home and talk to your grandmother, explain. And if you
Yes,
can do that, then it's good. You have to practice that. We haven't done that. That was a problem, that I like to talk to another colleagues, learn from them, and not to
sure.
try to explain to an average person that what is this modification is all about, what I was doing.
Well, I think about that with philosophy. I wake up and I'm fascinated by ancient philosophers, but most people aren't. Most people are busy, and my job is to tell them how this stuff matters to them. And if I can't do it, then or if they're not interested, it means I'm not doing a good enough job. Like, we have to figure out how to take our thing and make it matter to other people. That's what they pay you for.
Yes, I have to say, actually, in papers, published scientific papers in the 50s, 60s, I love them. Less data, but a lot of thinking. And
Yes.
today, 40, 50 pages of data, 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 and then you cannot find that. What is this thinking behind? So I love, and I just amazed at how deep thinker were those scientists in 50 years ago.
Well, because today they're not writing for an audience. They're writing to publish in some obscure academic journal that no one's ever going to read. And when you're writing to try to to reach the public, or you're trying to actually communicate what you're talking about, it's a different mode of thinking, I think.
They looked at the big pictures, and now these days,
Yes.
as I heard, they say you learn more and more from less and less, and finally you know everything from nothing.
That's beautiful. Well, that's an amazing place to start. Thank you for your amazing work, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan.